Hello and welcome to a new episode of our MBSE podcast. After having no guests at all in our last episode, we now have two guests, or two and a half men, which reminds me of another series. Anyway, we want to talk about the topic, the Craft of MBSE, which our two guests, Michael Vinarcik and Christoph Fischer, wrote together with me. So I'm the half guest. So today I'm not just the host, but also a bit of a guest. And Christian is therefore then one and a half host. Huh? But before things get any more complicated, I'll switch to our guests and who will introduce themselves in the usual way. So we'll start with Mike. So Mike, please introduce yourself.
Yes, hi, I'm Mike Vinarcik. I'm the Director for Digital Architecture and Requirements Engineering at SAIC. I'm also an adjunct professor at the University of Detroit Mercy, and I've been active as a system modeler for a number of years. I'm fairly widely published and won the first ever World Championship of Systems Architecting last year at Integrate 23. And it was a real pleasure for me to contribute to this book with Tim.
Thanks, Mike. And Christoph.
Hello, my name is Christoph Fischer. I'm working as a principal system engineer and enterprise architect at Roche Diabetes Care in the area of insulin delivery systems and other around diabetes care. And in that, and before I had now over 2 decades the chance and the possibility to work in medical domain in different devices, from pulse oximeters over sleep therapy devices to everything around diabetes care. And during this journey, I learned a lot about when systems become more complex and more bigger, what this means. And one for me important enabler to get this done is system engineering, model-based system engineering. And so I was really happy that I had a chance also to work on this craftsmanship. So the next or the star on system engineering or model-based system engineering to become on this longer road better and better. And so I'm happy to be here.
Great. Yeah, nice to have you too. And of course also Tim. So let's start easy. How did the idea for the book come about? Tim, you are the book writer and you always write books and some plenty of them in parallel. So how did this idea come by?
Well, that book project began a long time ago, I think almost 10 years or so. I was researching agile systems engineering that time and worked with Ari van Bennekom, who is one of the authors of the Agile Manifesto. And we worked on an Agile Manifesto for systems engineering. And well, to make a long story short, our conclusion was that you don't have to change that much in the Agile Manifesto, and you find more on it on our website, agilesystemengineering.com. And during that time, closely related to the agile movement is in software engineering is also the software craftsmanship movement. And I found the approaches just as relevant to systems engineering and couldn't find anything about it. So was nothing about craftsmanship with systems engineering. So I started to write something down, and that's how the book started. But well, the progress was very, very slow. I read a lot about it and looked at it from different angles, but at the same time, I wasn't bored and was fully booked with other projects like SysML 2, for example. And then I met Mike about 6-8 years ago or so, and I remember we had a dinner together at an OMG meeting. I think it was in Washington, but I can't remember how we got together on the book project. So maybe Mike, you can remember it?
Sure. I actually had to mine my old emails, but what had happened, I came into this fairly late. I missed a lot of the early work in model-based systems engineering. And so after 18 years in automotive, I switched over to aerospace defense. And so as I began to model, my focus was on using modeling for solving problems. I missed the whole diagram fest that was early MBSE. And so I became aware of Tim's work. I had studied for the OCSMP exams. I had purchased the SysMod book, which is how Tim's work became familiar to me. And I would randomly check his website. And one day I noticed this comment about wanting to do a Craft of MBSE book. I had recently published a paper or presented at the No Magic World Symposium that year on a very similar topic. I also had done a presentation, somewhat tongue-in-cheek, called A Swashbuckler's Guide to SysML Modeling, with a focus on being Jack Sparrow-esque and having fun, not necessarily being a pirate. Don't get me wrong. But so I reached out to Tim in December of 2016, pointed this out, said I'd love to work with him on this, and that's when that discussion began. And I can honestly say that many of the delays related to the publication of the book squarely rest on my shoulders. In the interim, obviously COVID happened. I have many teaching duties, and I was also the Incosi treasurer for 4 years. And so, Tim and I were trying to work together. And if anyone wants to be blamed for the delays in the book, it would be me. But that's how I got engaged. Two like-minded individuals from different backgrounds, finding each other through publication and having an opportunity to collaborate.
Okay. And Christoph, how did you come to those two original authors?
So I mentioned before that I had now the chance to work over 2 decades in system engineering in the medical domain. And I made the classical mistake at the beginning when I saw that our systems become bigger and bigger and complexer. And I was not anymore in working in Excel or in Microsoft Word to get these requirements documents done. I looked into what can be better done, how I can involve with this for the company. And then over time, I come into the topic of system engineering, model-based system engineering, and everything with what comes with it. And at the end, it ended that I introduced tool chains, write internal documentation, how to use SysML version 1 at that point in time, and give internal trainings on this topic. And I recognize it's evolving. More and more teams are jumping on it. And at some point in time, we come at limitations. You cannot keep everything up to date. You cannot do all the trainings. It's not my main job. I'm designing systems, not giving trainings. So I come to the conclusion I need to change something. And instead of reinventing the wheel, I looked outside. And then, there's a lot of good books. And by the way, also some from Tim, which I read at this point in time. And I was thinking, I want it practical. I wanted usable, and then I stumbled over, and I still never forget this. This was in Asia in a hotel where I was waiting for someone, and I was looking and browsing what are good books available, and I stumbled over this mod, another book from Tim. And this is how I come involved in this topic, by that way that I follow this book, I read other books, I go in contact with Tim, had some internal trainings and this kind of stuff. And at some point in time, I also saw there's a book. And I saw this book, Craftsman for MBSE. And I was thinking, that's the next level. I would like to get this also for reading. And I was asking Tim again, when it's done. And at some point in time, I changed my strategy and asked Tim how I can help you to get it done. And then now a little bit more than 1.5 years. Where we come to a conclusion, and Mike and Tim was so nice to say, okay, you can support this, help us to get it done. And then the plan was to get it in 1 year done, and we changed a lot in some areas in the table of content, how we organize things. There was a lot of good stuff there. We added especially these crafts, patterns, practices, and principles with more, I would say, hands-on parts, because I said for me it's also important, this practical part, hands-on part. And then, we get it on the day before Christmas done.
Cool.
So the first thing that was finished was the cover. It was finished 10 years ago. So it was
Okay. Cool. So, guys, we multiple times mentioned the craft of MBSE, but we did not explain what it is. So, Tim, for our listeners, what is the craft of MBSE?
Yeah, that's not so easy to grasp. So what is agile? So it's but we have a definition in our book, of course. So I can read directly from the book. I open it here. So the craft of MBSE is the ability to emphasize skills, passion, attitude, practicality, and humanity at performing MBSE. And an MBSE practitioner with this ability has the desire to do a job well for its own sake.
Okay. This is why it's not the art of MBSE. I get it.
No, it's a craft of MBSE. Right.
Great. So, and what does it mean for becoming a craftsperson in MBSE? Is there something special about MBSE type of guys? Christoph, do you have an idea or opinion on this?
Yeah, as mentioned before, I think this topic about lifelong learning. As said, for myself, it was first reading books, reading papers. And I recognized at some point in time that maybe this is the art point in it. There's also maybe a little bit art, that when you do this kind of models for complex system and recognize by how you make your slices and fuse and so on, and become easy to understand, looks nice, meaning of organized. And my aha effect was at some point in time when even quotation marks, people who is really far away from this kind of working, like maybe salespeople, customer support, designers, and you can show them, before we design even the device, here is an activity diagram with these flows, and then go through the logic. This is why I think it's by the fact that you want to become better by not just, for example, have a picture or visual chart or something like that. And even next step, if you want to have it in a correct form, so for example, complying with certain rules like SysML to have a common understanding and definition, the next level is to make it easy to consume for others, make it, as mentioned, look nice. And that's what I think is craftsperson or is a never-ending story. It's like always the carrot in front of you. You want to become better, better, better. And by doing more and more, you recognize as how much less you know. And that was also the interesting part for me in this book project, because Tim explained to me at some point in time, he started with some of these books with the saying, I want to learn this about what I'm writing. Because by you researching it, you're reflecting it, you're discussing it with other peoples, you learn by own. And that's what I think is the interesting part here with, you're not by certification a craftsperson. It's about, and Tim already mentioned our definition, it's about you want to become it, you want to do it for its own sake.
And I would tend to agree with that. You know, I've done a lot of studies of expertise. I contribute some of the sections talking about Roger Kneebone's work. And then there's something about that commitment to excellence and personal growth. You know, years ago, I used a slide, 2 slides, and it had all these little thumbnails of all the common architecture books and other things that were available. And my question was, what do all these have in common? And the fact was I'd read them all. And the point I was trying to make wasn't to pat myself on the back, but that there's a huge personal investment of time to get good at this. And as Tim and Christoph have said, the desire to do good work for its own sake. You know, I was fortunate to have studied under John Thomas, who was a former Nkosi president, and he was at Booz Allen when I was there. And occasionally he would come to Detroit and we would have dinner with the systems engineering team. And he infused this with the need to lead from the front as systems engineers. It wasn't about checking boxes in a process or being a quality policeman. It was about shepherding systems to successful deployment and use. And it became obvious to me we weren't going to get there if everybody just worked a 40-hour week and was practically mediocre at what they did, right? So, you know, the dirty secret with many fields is there's not enough really good people to go around. And, you know, the best of us make fewer mistakes. We fix mistakes faster. We can ride herd on other people. And so it became a passion for me of how do I push myself to be the best version of myself? And how can I find like-minded people where we can challenge each other, upskill each other? And how do I find that person that doesn't realize they could be great at this and then encourage them? That's one reason why I teach. It's an opportunity for me to find these talented, motivated, enthusiastic people that just need a little bit of guidance to set them on that path to true mastery and true craftsmanship. But to me, it's about that enthusiasm, that desire to be better, and to have a meaningful impact on the outcomes. You know, another thing that's not often talked about, you know, this world is finite in terms of energy, resources, whatever. So all the energy and material we spend on failed projects that either should have been terminated sooner or could have been shepherded through to success is pure waste. And I'm a grumpy old man. I just hate waste. And anything we can do to minimize that and help projects succeed, or if we know they're not viable, stop them early, that's in all of our mutual best interest. And for anyone who's interested in seeing more on that, I encourage you to read Michael Griffin's How Do We Fix Systems Engineering? It's a fabulous paper talking about the need for people with enthusiasm and skill and drive that ask the right questions.
Yeah, that's very interesting to hear or to see your point of view. In Germany, we say to become an expert, you need at least 10,000 hours, working hours on the topic. Yeah, and this would be more or less, I don't know, 5 years, non-stop, 40 hours a week on a topic, or more than 5 years. And I think only the real passionate people are getting really good at it, and will take all the 10,000 hours before leaving to something else, which might be in favor for them. Yeah.
You could argue about the number of hours, right? I would argue some of us have a steeper slope than others. Some may take more, some may take, but it's not zero. It's a lot.
Yeah.
And I would suggest the other thing that's unusual that really is necessary for success is being self-critical. A lot of people will put 10,000 hours in and do it the same way at hour 10,000 they did at hour 1. You have to be willing to look at your work last week and say, hey, how could I be better today? It was funny when I was first getting into this, some of my colleagues and I would look at models we had built 3 months before and realized we would do it totally different today. So I think that's the other missing piece, is that desire to be self-critical and not so in love with your opinions and your work that you can't challenge yourself to do it better.
Mm-hmm. And I think that's what Christoph and you said, Mike, also explains why, for example, there's no craftsmanship certification program out there. No? It evolved from Agile, and we know Agile is also well known for all their certification programs, but there's no certification, as far as I know, for craft, and I think that's not possible. You cannot certify that someone is a craftsperson. No? So it's a never-ending story, lifelong learning.
Don't we do this in Germany with all our craftsmen? So it's not an abstract thinking job like a systems engineer does, but for something like a plumber, it's a craftsmanship, and we certify it, so to say, by a school, and And I'm still missing, and I'm looking to Mike. It's fantastic that you have systems engineering courses or even whole studies in the United States, and we are lacking of this in Europe totally. It's catastrophe here.
Well, I would say this too. Craftsmanship, like in the guild system, part of it was exclusionary, but part of it was to maintain a standard of quality, right? You were an apprentice. You became a journeyman, you upskilled, and then when you want to be a master, you would present a masterwork for judging, and the other masters would decide if you were good enough to be considered a master, right? You can look at Star Wars with the Jedi Knights if you want, whatever. But the point is that, I think there is a community in MBSE where those of us that are at the top know each other and we respect each other's work, and that when it comes to teaching, though, I think there's a lot to be said for the craft model. My father was a tool and die maker here in America and had a very practical output, very practical mindset. He would tell me, tool and die makers will always succeed. They will make it work. And I guess that infused me a little bit. But when I teach systems engineering and MBSE, it's not just a classroom class. It's, 7 weeks of how do you navigate the tool and do certain diagrams. But then it's 7 weeks of, congratulations, you 5 people are modeling a Mars orbiter together. And so I really feel the thing that we need, and not every U.S. curriculum is like this, and I would love to see this expand internationally, but I think it's that shared experience of working towards a common goal in modeling where you understand that all this data in the tool has a purpose. One of my happiest moments is at the end of the term, the students have modeled successfully the validation rules, which could be a whole nother topic of a lecture, encode as much smarts as I can into the model to make sure it's complete and consistent and coherent. When they're done, I export that and show them, look, you just made 1,000 pages of content about this system. Could you have done that as a team of 6 in, 7 weeks any other way? And that's when the light bulb comes on that this is the way to steward this information collectively. And it's that shared experience that really moves them forward in skill and understanding.
Mm-hmm. Christoph, you have a similar view on this?
Yeah, if I may add to this, and Mike already touched it, system engineering is not only what you do for yourself, or if you become or want to go this journey, as it's sometimes called. It's also, and there's a lot of similarities, as we also try to show in the book, with other things like this, well-known apprenticeship model, where you first an apprentice, become a journeyman, and then a master, which is maybe more medieval thinking. In more Asia-driven or HR-driven, you're thinking about the shuhari, where you're on a shoe level, first try to learn, to repeat, how you go then the next step. And that's the part which I would like to add to the whole thing. You come at some point in time to this where you give it to the next people, your colleagues, your co-workers, your students. And it's also about, I think from my point of view, giving it further down. And it's not only that what you learned give to others, so that they maybe not repeating your mistakes, or at least learn out of them. No, it's also that you get something back, because in the discussion, again, you learn something, by that you're becoming also better. You extend your viewpoints. I think it keeps you young if you have a lot to do with students and children in general, because you learn from them.
I know Tim teaches as well, I believe, in his day job. And the other thing I find useful when I teach is sometimes students will find something novel. There were a few innovations in my modeling approach that were actually triggered by students. I thought they were making a mistake. And then as I looked at it more closely, I was like, oh, that actually works better than what I've been teaching. And then we'll switch to that, which again comes back to that openness of chasing an objective, better way to do it and not just being in love with your approach. Have you had similar experiences, Tim? Yeah,
exactly. It's the same. When I teach, I think sometimes I learn more than my students. So from all their questions or their findings, you learn a lot, and you need this openness. That I'm not the master teacher and know everything, and so it's on the same level with them.
Yeah, I think the other challenge we all face too with this is that it's, unlike physics or math, which you can teach with a piece of chalk, right? To teach system modeling and get good at it, you cannot escape the fact that you need a tool, you need a language, and you need a method. And they're all interwoven with each other. You cannot really effectively teach MBSE with a chalkboard. And so that's the other challenge with all this. And I think part of the place a lot of the early efforts derailed was that they were so focused on diagrams and such, they lost sight of the outcome. And I think the thing that really distinguished the craftsman, in addition to doing good work for its own sake, is that it's also work with a purpose. It's not just we're making a beautiful, useless model, but it's laser focused on getting the right information to the right people at the right time so they can make the right decision and improve the odds of program success. So I guess I open it up to my other two guests. What's your take on that?
Yeah, I think we had too much focus on diagrams the last 30 years. So since UML, and books are full of explanations how it works, what this box means and what that line means, but you found not so much information about the model behind the diagrams, and that's the important part. And it's not only the data structure. It's then it's this. The craft,
the semantics,
to work with the model, the semantics. So, hopefully this will change with SysML v2. Now, SysML v2 is much more precise and has this textual notation, so it distract hopefully a bit from the diagrams, and now. Maybe we
Yeah.
will now do more real modeling.
Yeah, it's interesting that in many discussions of integrating SysML to, I don't know, a PLM system or something, the biggest issue was the diagram doesn't look like in my tool. And the thing is, don't care about the diagram. It has no meaning that the actors of kind A are all to the left and the others to the right. It has no meaning. Model it correctly.
We're in a dangerous space because I hate that. I've told people, if you're using geographical location on a picture as a surrogate for data, you don't know how to model. I mean, what's your perspective on that, Christoph?
I would like to add another angle. I think it's also about experience to understand what is good enough. Not because a framework is telling you need to this view, this view, this view. You draw all of the views and maybe nobody is consuming it. It's about understanding what is at this point in time in your system lifecycle, in your development, or from early concept phase to maybe retirement. What is at this point in time required for understanding, for overview, and so on. And another aspect is here that you also understand what does it mean to have a scalable structure. You're maybe in making simple thing, you have a system with, in my example, 5 system elements, which composing the systems. And at this point in time, you maybe only focus on first system element, and then you go into detail there. And again, it's decomposing, give more and more elements below, but you always go only down as necessary. And this could be that at the end, you have in some areas, because it's important, because it's required, you go really deep into a domain. In others area, you maybe have only a box high level, it exists. And that is about understanding. You want to have it structured that way, that you are scalable, that you can go into details when necessary, that from the beginning you know how to set up the architecture, actually in meaning of diagrams, structure, and behavior, but also in how you organize your deliverables, your artifacts, that you can extend when it's necessary to extend, but you find for your domain, your room, definition about when it's good enough. For example, before it goes in a domain like electrical, software, mechanics, which is already very deep. Or it's maybe on a level where you say, before an end user break the pieces into parts because you only need the user interaction. So that is about this experience to understand when it's good enough. And from the beginning, even if you know that at the beginning, maybe you only need a system context diagram, everything which you set up in behind is already prepared that when you need it, you can easily extend it without, and that's, I think, where modeling is also handy compared to pictures, you can extend it without redrawing everything.
You know, it's funny you mentioned that because I go on at length in some of my lectures about the need in almost every discipline to set that good enough bar at the right place, right? Because if you set it too high, you take on cost for no reason. And if you set it too low, you have nothing but problems. And much of that goes to quote Christopher Alexander, making our choices deliberately and in the least arbitrary way possible. We should have a good reason why we stopped at a certain level. It shouldn't just be random. And it's amazing to me how many times I'll review a model done by a different organization and I'll ask them, well, why did you do this or stop here? And they have no answer. And that should never be the case. You should always know why you've gone to 9 decimal places or stopped at the first significant figure. I mean, you should just know that.
Mm-hmm. So, well, our book, I would say, has 2 parts. No, one part is about what is craft, and the other part is a collection of what we call the 3 Ps. Christoph already mentioned the 3 Ps. It's principles, practices, and patterns. And then we say for short 3 Ps. So yeah, Christoph, can you explain what is our 3P collection in the book?
Oh, now you got me. Now you can see if I really listened when you wrote it. I think maybe first we should shortly speak about what we mean with these things. So if you're thinking about this principle, are they, from my point of view, our point of view, guiding concepts, ideas, or values stated in a context-independent manner, so in a general way. so that you can apply it in a more general way. If you go then the next level in the details, you come into these practices, and then you can for sure debate if it's good practices or proven practices or whatever you want to call it, but it's already in a context-dependent way. It's already broken down to more usable. And if you do the same thing again and again in a similar way, then we use the term patterns here, which is a formalized practice. It's like work instruction, a check mark, a to-do list, something which you again can repeat because you do it in a similar way. So, and the idea is now, and that's I think really also where the community hopefully come into place. We started with a collection of things which we think are a good start, which we come in our mind to our history, where we thought this is something we want to write about. And there are, I would say, if you allow me, 2 requests now to this listener of this podcast and also in future for when we speak also hopefully later about what comes next, is please provide feedback, what you think about this patterns and practices and principles which we collected in certain domains, and add things where you think we're missing something, because we started in the area of what was it, general, so which apply to in general context, like things like free thinking, problem solving, process, system thinking, and so on, a really high level. Then I think, and I now need to look into the table of content, modeling, which goes more, what is modeling, but without going into a language, so in a general way, like continuous integration, topics about automated validation, modeling why questions, so why you do something and how far. And last thing, because we obviously working a lot with SysML, where then again 3 Ps in the context of SysML. But this doesn't mean that it's limited to SysML. If someone, for example, want to speak about another modeling language, then that's the opportunity. I hope I didn't forget something, because you really surprised me by this question.
No, perfect. Yeah, and I think it's important to add that these practices, they can also be contradictory. No? So for example, different naming conventions. And I think this is also a part of the craft to be able to withstand this, that you have contradictory methods or conventions, but you can withstand this and you are able to use it in the appropriate context then.
Mike,
especially I think.
Well, I was going to say, I think it's an exciting time to be doing all this, right? You know, one of the books I'd read a while back was What Engineers Know and How They Know It. And it's talking about the birth of aeronautical engineering and how they had to translate good stick feel that a pilot wanted to engineering design guidelines, damping and other things that all work together to give the pilot what they want. In many ways, we're doing that right now for systems engineering and our stakeholders, right? What is the way to get a model that's generally useful, but provides key stakeholders what they want? How do we extend it for given domains? And as we settle on these principles, one thing I don't think we talk enough about is suppressing bad ideas. We live in a time when everyone's opinion is equally valid, and how dare you say someone's wrong? And I'm teasing just a little bit, but I think as a community, we have to decide what right looks like and just begin to say, hey, we had the discussion, it's over, this is how you do it. Mechanical engineers do not have 15 different ways to do a free body diagram. There aren't 8 different ways to draw a circuit. I mean, at some point, certain aspects of this will have to become standardized. And I think that goes to, again, thoughtful adoption of best practices from other disciplines. Personally, I feel many times we are misapplying software concepts to systems. And I'm not saying that some don't apply, but we need to be more thoughtful. I'm a skeptic about certain aspects of object-oriented. In my world, reality is not object-oriented, and slavish inheritance sometimes causes more problems than it solves. Now, we'll see how SysML2 impacts that. But again, we need to have these discussions between us so we can then standardize on these principles, practices, patterns that have been proven over time to be useful, vetted by the community, and then we can move on and have the discussion on the next area. I feel like everybody feels they have their secret sauce and 80% of it's common. Can we just agree on it and move out and begin tackling the next challenge as opposed to reinventing the wheel? I think Tim had said, we've been stuck about diagrams for 30 years. Please, a model is about the model. It's not about the diagrams. So there we go.
Good. So that sounds to me like, it's a thing that wasn't there, this craftsmanship of MBSE, and you want to evolve it. And I know that you have already some kind of community on LinkedIn. And what are the plans for this? What happens next?
Yeah, well, it would be very arrogant to claim that we can know and write down all the important principles, patterns, and practices for MBSE. So now our book is it's a starting point, no? and we hope it will be a spark that leads to more people in the MBSE community sharing their free piece. No? And our plan for future editions is that we change our roles more and more from being the authors of the book to being the editors of the book, and we collect free pieces from the community and publish them in the book. Or plus somewhere online, we already got some feedback that would be good to have the free piece online in a kind of a database and searchable and things like that. So there are already some good ideas in the community. And yes, we have a LinkedIn group. I think most people in our community are on LinkedIn. So we have a LinkedIn group called Craft of MBSE. So it's easy to find. And you can join the group, and if you have a free P, then provide it to the community and let's discuss it. And if we agree it's good for the book, then it's part of the next edition. We also have a community on LeanPub. Now, our book is published on LeanPub, and they also provide a forum, discussion groups, and so. But I think LinkedIn is more commonly used.
Okay,
then the idea.
We should definitely link the LinkedIn group down below in the info box, so people can find it quickly and can join you.
Right.
Yeah, so Tim or Mike, Christoph, any additions to the craft of MBSE we did not talk about yet?
I would say
Go, Chris. Sorry,
I would say it's a never-ending story, and I think this is what Tim also meant with I would like really to say, okay, let us move to the next stage. Let us all consider what it means to become better in this modern-based system engineering. Hopefully not making the same mistake, because I'm also in the agile environment, and yes, I have done certification and this kind of stuff. Agile and so on. But yeah, at some point in time, you have the feeling it's more certifications and getting the next training program or the new edition, which again, invalidate your certification, you need a new certification. So I hope you will not fall into this pitfall, but it's that we all, everybody who are feeling with the status quo is not good enough, want to involve himself, team, organization, or cross-organization, that we together really bring these pieces together, work on it, discuss it, improve what is already maybe also written in the book. As said, we have just started with a PowerPoint. We had some feedback and reviews before, but that doesn't mean it's a never-ending story. And collect, improve, and from that learning.
Yeah, I would agree. And I was going to say, I contributed to our logo that's over my shoulder here. If you notice, the tagline is methods, models, mastery. And I think that sums up the essence of what I hope the discussion that this book helps to foster, right? There's a lot of work we have to do to safely steward these coming systems, autonomous vehicles. I mean, there's just a whole host of insanely complex and complicated cyber physical systems that our lives will depend on. And the world will be a better place if we do a good job with that. I don't see a way to steward that without really taking advantage of model-based systems engineering and the full digital engineering thread. And so, and I've told people in the past, you could have sketchy doors or Excel-based requirements before, and we could all work our way around it sort of with tribal knowledge and things. A digital thread, if you're trying to hook up some piece of sustainment information and the matching piece is not back there in the architecture model, the thread falls apart, right? We really have to hold ourselves to the highest standards at the beginning of these projects. And the only way to get there is to work together as a community. And so I really hope that this fosters that collegial sharing of best practices. I mean, obviously nothing competitive or sensitive, but our best practices so we can do a better job. And I hope that we're able to hold the tool vendors to higher standards for interoperability, standards compliance and usefulness. As a community, it's up to us to hold each other to those standards and to hold ourselves to a desire to do a better job. I hope, if nothing else, everyone who watches this and reads the book wants to be a better version of themselves tomorrow and to reflect on their work. Many times I'll open a model up and there's this pile of noodles or spaghetti of cross mounts and things. And, it's like your desk. It gets messy if you don't put energy into keeping it clean. We have to do that both for our individual work and the discipline. Let's put a little bit of energy forth to maintain the essence of what we need to be getting done and to make it elegant and productive going forward. Tim, what your thoughts on that?
Yeah. I agree with both of you. So there's nothing more to add from my side, and I switch back to the role of being the host. We come to an end of this episode, but we could go to the next level and talk forever about the craft of MBSE. But now it's 45 minutes, let's look forward. Our next topic is not fixed yet. We are still in contact with our guests and looking for dates. So stay tuned. We will announce it soon. And then I will close with that we should not forget.
Trust us. We are systems engineers. Goodbye.
All right. Bye-bye.